This is the Newsload.
Hi, I'm Carrie Anne and I'm here with Newsload, and today I am so very excited to interview Andrew Lawton. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Carrie. Good to be with you.
How are you today?
Very, very warm. It has been a scorcher in I'm in our constituency office in St. Thomas, and it's a beautiful, beautiful old train station. But the older the building, the worse the ventilation. But these are the things that we can endure. First world problems, as they say.
That train station is beautiful, though, but hot.
Yeah, exactly. And we're upstairs, and heat rises. And I think, as one person explained it to me, the air conditioning has already been used up by every other tenant by the time it gets to our office.
Well, thank you so much for enduring the heat for us. We really appreciate it. And schlepping all the way to Ottawa to fight the good fight. We really appreciate it. First question, because Carney was elected and he was a Liberal, what happens to the Conservative intentions?
What happens to the conservative what? Sorry?
Intentions, like
Oh,
you,
intention. Well,
yeah.
look, we were elected as members of parliament, regardless of which party we're in, to deliver on a set of promises. And I ran on a platform that Pierre Poilievre put forward that I think was a very important one, which was a platform that was going to get affordability and the cost of living in check, that was going to get serious about crime, that was going to deal with immigration, which is a system that's been broken over the last 10 years. And all of those things I was elected to deliver on. And it would have been a lot easier to put this platform into effect if we had a conservative government in Ottawa. But the things that I was elected to do, the things that I was looking to do as an MP are still there. So I think for me, I still have a mandate from the voters and constituents in my riding. It just means I have to work extra hard from the opposition benches to really deliver on these promises.
Absolutely. And I guess the reality is if you put a bill in place and people vote on it, whether they're Liberal or Conservative, if the bill is passed, then you're good to go.
Yeah, and I think that, one thing that is slightly encouraging is that there's been, if I could just be partisan for a moment, there's been a little bit of theft from the Liberal government of some of our key platform items. So one of the first things Mark Carney did was repeal the consumer carbon tax. This is something that was a Liberal policy, and it was the Conservatives that were championing the idea of repealing it for the last several years. So we're happy to see that go. We think it could go further and repeal the industrial carbon tax, which goes after businesses. Getting rid of the GST on new homes. This was, again, a version of a policy that we put forward that the Liberal government has now taken. Now, what we're seeing is that they'll oftentimes take a couple of things from our platform and not go far enough. But I think that's where we get into our role as opposition and things that we can continue to push them to do and hold them to account, make sure they're spending taxpayer money wisely. And I mean, I'd say if they took every one of our policies, I'd be very happy because I ran because I believe in those policies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, the protests that happened during your campaign were almost vindictive. And how did you feel about the protests while you were running?
Look, one of the things when I set foot into the campaign in the first place that was very important to me was having as many meaningful conversations one-on-one with voters as I could. And we knocked on, I think it was by the end of the campaign, 28,000 doors. And I had some very frank conversations with people. I had people that were, really raw, enthusiastic supporters. I had people that were very hostile non-supporters in there. And I had people that were on the fence. And I actually got to level with them one-on-one and have a very constructive civil conversation, regardless of whether they voted for me or not. I think that, look, I'm a believer in free speech, and I think people have a right to stand outside a politician's office and wave their signs and wave their placards. One thing that I can say is that there are people that are not interested in having civil or constructive conversation. They're not interested in working through differences. There are people that, believe things that are false, spread things that are false. And my focus through the campaign was on talking to people that actually are genuinely interested in how we work together and work across party lines if need be. And that was my focus. So yeah, it's disappointing to see some of that, but that's also free speech. So I respect the right of people to do that, even if I think they're a bit misguided.
I think it's very admirable that you can, water off a duck's back. And I think that's a lot of politics in the first place, of being able to, like take it in the chin and move on and focus on, the positives of, like what your intentions are and such. And one of the wonderful things that have been happening is your gun restrictions argument went viral. Like people are just in love with how you just knew what you were saying. You knew the laws, and the other guy didn't. It was fascinating.
Yeah, and that I'll say too. I mean, people have asked me in this social media age, just going back to my work in media, how do you make a viral clip? How do you make something go viral? And I mean, you can come up with the best headline and the best caption and do the best editing job, but at the end of the day, the substance has to be there. And this was something where I could not have scripted a better interaction. I was in the House of Commons, and it's this specific procedural thing called Committee of the Whole, where it was late at night. I think it was like 9 p.m. or something. It's after hours. And you have a minister, and you have a 5-minute block of time in which you can ask the minister questions about their file. And the only real rule of it is that the length of time they have to answer is the same length of time you took to ask the question. So if you ask a very pointed, direct question, they have to give you a pointed, direct answer. If you take 10 seconds to ask a question, they have 10 seconds to give you an answer. So I was asking factual questions, and I was trying to expose how little he knew about firearms ownership in Canada, but I had no idea how little he knew about his own file. And what I learned, and I was as surprised as anyone else, is that he didn't even know what a firearms license was, which is like the most essential thing of the Canadian firearms program that he is responsible for. So yeah, I stopped looking, but at one time it had like 1 million views on Twitter, 1 million views on Facebook, and a bunch more from other people who had shared it. I mean, and yeah, I'm glad to get attention on that, but I would have rather that not been an issue in the first place. I'd rather not have a public safety minister that doesn't know about the gun laws that they're responsible for.
Absolutely, absolutely. But knocking it right out of the park is very impressive. And obviously, the people that voted for you are very pleased with the results of you being able to, argue and state your claim properly, where the other guy, has no idea. And his argument is, I've only been in this position for 3 weeks, but it's like, yeah, but.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but not only that, and he used that as cover a couple of times that evening. I've only been here for 3 weeks, but what he missed is that before that, he was the parliamentary secretary to the justice minister. So he had actually been on that very issue for several years, and he had been involved in debates when the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau was changing gun laws. So he was not actually this guy that just woke up one day and was like all of a sudden responsible for gun laws. He had been in that issue for quite a while. So really no excuse to not know it. And I think the cautionary tale is to do your research. I mean, I learned a lesson from that myself, of just making sure anytime I'm walking into a committee or an interview or into the House of Commons, I got to know the stuff that I'm supposed to know.
Speaking of committees, you've been appointed the Justice Committee, yes?
Yes.
What are your interests in that?
So it's to me, it's not an issue. It's not the committee that I put as my first choice, because you actually get to rank where you want it to be, because I didn't think there's any chance I'd get it. It's one that I know is a very important, very prestigious committee. And it's one that I was so very honored to be put on, because one of the number one issues I heard about during the campaign was crime. People who feel like they are no longer safe in their own communities, whether it's people in London, which has seen a massive ballooning in crime, especially street and property crime, St. Thomas as well, and rural areas in my riding, which encompasses all of Elgin County. People that used to never lock the doors, and now they do. And again, if you live in a city, you may think that's kind of a cute, quaint novelty, but that's actually quite a meaningful decline for people that live out in Vienna or West Lorne or something. And why I think this is important is because a lot of the issues that we have when you look at the increase in crime come from socioeconomic factors. We see, homelessness on the rise. We see affordability crisis driving people to this, but it's also a consequence very significantly of bad bail laws. The Liberal government previously changed it to make it more easy for criminals to get bail, so much so that even if you were arrested for something very serious, you could be arrested in the morning, out on bail in the afternoon. And we have seen an increase in people committing crimes while on bail, committing in some cases violent crime on bail. And there have been a couple of really tragic cases where someone has murdered someone while they were out on bail. So we in the election as a Conservative Party were very keen on repealing these bail laws that are not working and making communities safer. So being on the Justice Committee actually puts me in a very key role in being able to advance some of that and bring witnesses forward who can talk about their experiences. So it's an incredible honor, and I think very relevant to the work that I'm doing in my riding, but also things that everyone across the country is dealing with in some form or another.
Absolutely, absolutely. This catch and release policy is ridiculous. And it's gotten to the point where there's 60, 70 arrests with no repercussions. And I really like the 3 strikes, you're out, you're locked up, interest. And, once or twice we understand you're, having hard times, you made a mistake, you didn't understand. But, like 60 times, you're a professional criminal at this point.
Yeah, and I forget the numbers. I don't have them handy right now, but there was one case in British Columbia where some tiny, tiny number of people, I think it was around 50, had been arrested thousands of times. And it was, if you did the math, it was the case where every person was being arrested dozens of times to make this happen. And this is entirely preventable. Police departments have actually warned about this, and you've seen police departments during the election. They've never really gotten political, but this past election they were, because they were saying something has to change. And you had police associations, so that's the unions representing officers, or in some cases the actual police chiefs coming out and endorsing the Conservative platform on crime. And I think that's very important that we listen to those that are dealing with these issues on the front line.
Absolutely, absolutely. When I was volunteering for the campaign for Kurt Holman in the Fanshawe area, one lady had called saying she was on disability and her funds were so low, she was only eating 1 meal a day. Is that something that, I know that you're in the Justice Committee, but is that something that, will be worked on, the budget of being able to increase the disability funds?
Well, I hope it will. And I mean, the challenge when you're looking at issues like that is that there's a small pie of money that the government has to spend from taxation and other things. And we have a very huge debt load in Canada right now. We have a lot of things that government is wasting money on. And what you just shared is a tragedy in that you have, people who are on fixed incomes, on pensions that can't afford to keep up with the cost of living increases. And then you have government increasing by, I think, $26 billion, the amount of money they're spending on consultants. You have a public service that's grown by 42% in the last 10 years. Are you getting 42% more from your federal government? No. That's not 42% more in spending for programs. That's 42% more people to deliver the same amount of services as 10 years ago. So there is a lot of waste in government. And I think that money that's there to support people needs to go to people, not to bureaucracy. So we're in the opposition benches. So again, I can't promise you anything's going to be in the budget when the government eventually gets around to putting one forward. But these are exactly the issues that we need to get serious about, because people are being forced into poverty. And the price of groceries are only going to continue rising unless something changes.
Absolutely, absolutely. Being at, in Ottawa, have you run into any politicians that have left you starstruck?
I wouldn't say starstruck. In fact, if anything, like once you get in politics, the shine comes off of it a lot more because you realize that everyone's, we're all just ordinary people. But I will say that the place itself leaves me starstruck. When I walk into the House of Commons every single day, I take a moment and I'm like, wow, like I'm just so grateful that I'm here. And, and for me, what I said in my maiden speech, and I truly mean it, is that chair that I sit in does not belong to me. It belongs to the people of Elgin, St. Thomas, London South. And it's, them who've given me the privilege of being a custodian of that seat for however long I get to sit there. But for me, that institution has made me starstruck. I've seen Mark Carney, 4 or 5 times, and him, whatever. But the House of Commons itself, that to me is the real joy, as someone who's always, from the time I was a teenager, really really loved politics, and to find myself there, there is a part of it that takes my breath away every day.
It's so beautiful, and the wood is just so luxurious. Does it smell good in there?
Um, that's a good question. I'll inhale next time I'm there, and I'll send you a note. It didn't smell descript or anything. It doesn't smell especially bad or especially good. I guess there was one night that we were in there, and we were voting until it was like 11:30 at night, and it probably didn't smell good that day because everyone's been in their suits on a warm summer day for the last 14 hours. But yeah, you never know.
Yeah, that's more locker room.
Yeah, exactly.
So, people are very vocal on Facebook and such.
Mm-hmm.
And I just read today one lady asking if you have any interest in running for prime minister one day.
Gosh, no. Look, I mean, the one thing that is so great about my role right now is that I get to really focus on the community that I'm serving, while also, dealing with some of these big picture issues. And, I've always said I want to serve, the people who put me there, and serve the values that I was elected to deliver on. And I'm doing that in a way that I'm really happy about now. So I have no ambitions beyond MP at the moment.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, you're doing a great job. Please keep it up. We're all very, very impressed and delighted. And if you could just say one last thing for me, say it loud, say it proud. I love Newsload.
I love Newsload.
Thank you, Andrew, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Carrie. And let me just say, I have such an appreciation for independent media. It's where my background is, so keep up the work you're doing. It's so important to have voices like yours doing this.
Thank you, Andrew.
This is the Newsload.